Welcome, Hoopheads, to another edition of Kings Court, presented to you by www.sports-kings.com. The logo's right here below my finger. You can check us out. Make sure you subscribe to the page. Leave some comments. We'll chop it up with you a little bit. You can also find us on Facebook if you type in Sports-Kings in your search bar. And, we have all kinds of things there for you to interact with. You can follow us on Twitter at RealSportsKings. I'm Andy Flint. I'm your host. Along with me today, I have Michael. How's it going, Michael?
Just another day in paradise, Andy. You know how it is.
We have Brandon. Brandon, how you doing?
Doing great. So glad to have our little crew back here. Another episode of Kings Court. And like you said, Andy, leave us comments, guys. We will respond to you.
And if you couldn't tell, Brandon likes the Phoenix Suns a little bit.
Really?
Last but not least, I got my man Desmond. Desmond, how's it going?
Things are going great. I've been enjoying this series, and I think we've been having some good fun here, so I'm excited.
So it's about 5 minutes after 11 here in the morning. Desmond's not going to be with us the entire show. He has some other obligations to do on his grind.
DP.
So let's start right off here, and we're going to talk about the New York Knicks playoffs. Playoffs?
Whoa!
Oh, dude, I was going to do that. Man, come on.
The
You
Knicks,
stole that from me.
the Knicks are at 33-43 and currently holding on to the 8th spot in the East, which will pit them against the Miami Heat, which personally I think is a great first-round series, albeit I don't think they can beat the Heat. But the Atlanta Hawks are still hanging around at 32-42 for that 8th spot, so we're going to see what happens here. But let's talk about the Knicks as the 8th seed. How much of a surprise is this? The potential for them to do any damage. We'll go to you first, Desmond.
Well, the potential for them to keep the AFC, to retain it, is very strong, I would say. Looking at just the Atlanta Hawks, their mindset right now, GM Danny Ferry said they have no intentions of making the playoffs. That's not their mindset right now. They want to position themselves for the NBA draft to get that pick, because we all know the Atlanta Hawks are run-of-the-mill team. They're just a middle-of-the-pack, mediocre team, and when they're hit with injuries, that makes them even worse. So the Knicks have a great chance. They've been playing great basketball. And then just look at the defensive intensity that they've added to the game. I'm not going to say it's all Phil Jackson's work, but I think his presence has done something there. And then last but not least, I've been very impressed, and I'm very happy for Amari Stoudemire. He's been playing great basketball. We all thought he was done. Brandon, you surely remember his Phoenix Sun days. He was a remarkable power forward. We thought the knees were shot, but he's still playing. So the odds of the Knicks keeping the 8th seed is very strong, but that's at least their problems if they retain it, because we know who they got to face if they do.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing with Phil Jackson is he is the ultimate motivator. I mean, we've heard this a million times, and him being in New York is probably a big reason. The Atlanta Hawks, a quick little tidbit, they're going to sit roughly somewhere projected. They'll be in the lottery, I think, at this point, but probably towards the later end, maybe around 10 or 11 if this continues. So let's go to you next, Michael. What do you think about the Knicks in the playoffs? My Macaulay Culkin moment.
Well, since you decided to take my Jim Mora moment away from me, let me, calculate
nothing else, folks.
It's, what baffles me about this whole thing is the fact that they're, 10 games under 500 we've mentioned, and they are in the 8th spot. I mean, how bad is this Eastern Conference when you've got the Wizards at 39-36, who are the 6th seed, the Bobcats are at the 7th seed. I mean, this is ridiculous to me. I mean, long gone are the days, of John Starks running with Patrick Ewing, and the Knicks being godly like you remember them, Andy, right? I mean, those were your Knicks, right?
What do you call me, old?
Hey, you were substantially higher in age than some of us.
I do remember that. Yes.
Yeah. See, but at the same time, like we've all been talking about with Phil Jackson, this is something that Knicks fans have been waiting for. They've been waiting for this team to stop underachieving and to make this push into the playoffs. Now, will they do anything against Miami? 95% chance says no, but hey, we said that about the Golden State Warriors when they were playing the Dallas Mavericks that year that the 8 upset the 1. Anything can happen. It's very possible.
About the Grizzlies versus the Spurs.
Yeah. hopefully this kind of gets some people off of Mike Woodson's back a little bit. I'm not sure if anything will in New York, because I don't think anybody in New York will ever be happy with anything that happens in the Big Apple. But you know what? Good for Knicks fans. Good for the Knicks. It was kind of I never expected it, considering they came into the Staples Center and got absolutely shellacked by the Lakers.
Was it 51 in the third on the fourth?
51 points in the third quarter, and they were up like 114-79 or something ridiculous like that.
That is crazy.
But that was about the only good thing that we hit. That
without
I, as a Lakers fan, can say about exactly. I mean, that was like the one game that Laker Nation can actually say, look, we actually had a team that game, and it looked okay.
Well, let's kick this. Let's kick this over to Brandon. Let's get Brandon's quick input here. Brandon, what do you think about the Knicks 33-43, maybe heading to the playoffs?
First off, I agree with all you guys, so good job to all you guys. But I actually did my homework on this, and the last time that this team won a playoff series before last year, if that makes any sense, was in like 1999-2000 when they beat the Toronto Raptors. Then they beat the Boston Celtics last year 4-2. So them going to the playoffs, I don't really want to call it a surprise, but I am a little, double taking at it. I'm like, wait a second, they're making the playoffs first off with that record and with everything that's happened this year. But it's like Desmond said, they've been playing fantastic. Mark Stoudemire is looking like he was in Phoenix. And I am hopping on the Tim Hardaway Jr. bandwagon. I love that kid. I hope that he's a star one day. The future with Phil Jackson and Mike Woodson, I guess we'll have to see.
And let's not forget,
so if we want to take
the Knicks have won 3 straight here. I mean, this is a winning streak.
Yeah.
Well, they had a win streak before too.
Yeah.
But Brandon referenced the 99-2000 Knicks. I think they won 50 games that year.
Yeah.
Michael alluded to my age. Yes, people, I'm 30 years old. And I do remember those teams. That was kind of towards the end of Patrick Ewing, but he was still there. They had Allen Houston, Latrell Sprewell, Kurt Thomas, Larry Johnson, guys like that. So, yeah, that was a good team. They won 50 games. Let's transition this right into our next topic, which Michael doesn't even know about because he got here at the last second. We kind of did a little switcherooski from our schedule. Well, you'll like this one anyways. We're going to talk about the potential of a new coach in Detroit.
I do know about this.
Tom Izzo, and it seems like the rumors are relatively weak, but Tom Izzo could potentially – the Pistons want to go after him hard. Michigan State's coach. He's in a good position. Will he leave? Probably not. Charles Barkley thinks he's a moron or an idiot or some word in Barkley's vocabulary that's great as an insult to somebody. So let's talk a little bit about the potential of Tom. Let's just say Tom Izzo does go to the Pistons. He probably won't, but let's say he does. Let's talk about that scenario. Michael, we'll go right to you first.
Well, I don't know if anybody ever, reads our comments or anything like this. I do believe I suggested this one last night.
You did.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, so I kind of do know. No, but on all seriousness, I think this would be a really good move for Detroit. If they can somehow swing him away from East Lansing, I think it would bring some credibility to the Pistons that they probably haven't had since Bill Lambert was playing. It's been a while since we can actually say, or even when Larry Brown was there, and that 04 team was probably the last credible Detroit Pistons team.
I'd agree with that.
So good for if they can do it. If you can pull Tom Izzo from East Lansing and bring him there, good for them, because I think a lot of people would want to play for a Tom Izzo. Tom Izzo is one of those guys who's a very respected NCAA coach, a very respected basketball mind. The guy's a basketball genius. So why not try to bring him in? Billy Donovan's another guy who is a very well-respected coach that could probably try to make the jump. He's
already done that before, though, Michael. He already agreed to Orlando like 9 years ago and then backed out.
Well, maybe Donovan's not then, but Izzo, why not? Why not? I mean, who else is going to coach in Detroit?
Absolutely.
Charles Barkley?
Well, it might be Barkley. Let's get Desmond's opinion on this here. Desmond, what would you think of Tom Izzo as the Pistons' next head coach?
I agreed with Michael that that would be a great move for Detroit. That would be. I mean, Tom Izzo is one of the most decorated NCAA coaches of all time. He has a a 468 to 187 overall head coaching record. He's a champion. You know, he has 6 regional championships, 7 Big Ten championships. And all those stats, all those factors are why he should not go to the Detroit Pistons because it would be a horrible move for Tom Izzo.
Yes.
The fact of the matter is the Detroit Pistons are, again, one of those middle-of-the-road teams. You know, they have Jennings, they have Josh Smith, and they're horrible. Now, they do have a bright future in Andre Drummond and Greg Monroe, but looking at the rest of the roster, looking at Brandon Jennings, who I don't think will ever be better than what he is now, or substantially better than what he brings to the table. Josh Smith, I think we can all agree, we're not going to get the Josh Smith that he was before, which even then wasn't that efficient. He was very flashy. He made plays. He was impactful, but he wasn't quite there yet in the first tier of NBA superstars. I consider him a star. Now, if you ask a relatively new NBA fan who Josh Smith is, they might not know. So if I'm Tom Izzo, you've built an empire at Michigan State. You've built a tournament repeat offender. You've built a team that, quite frankly, a lot of top recruits come to, and not only do top recruits come to Michigan State, they stay. He gets kids to stay at Michigan State and be seniors, and maybe they'll leave as juniors. But the fact of the matter is, he builds great teams in Michigan State. He's of the Coach K ilk there. So if I'm Tom Izzo, I stay in Michigan State, and Detroit can kick rocks.
And they're looking. The one big thing I think is they're looking at a rebuild. Michigan State is at this point. I think this is why a lot of this is coming out, because they're going to lose Adrian Payne.
Right.
He's a senior. Shout out to Josh Smith, because they play similar basketball in my opinion. I think Payne's calling for the ball out of 3-point line. He just wants to shoot. And then they're going to lose. They'll probably lose sophomore Gary Harris, and they're also going to lose Keith Appling.
Right.
So, those are 3.
You got to trust his recruiting process.
That he does. I think he's going to stay. We talked about the money a little that a college coach can make in a big school a little bit before the show. Let's get your opinion here, Brandon.
See, it's sort of a mixed bag for me because, Andy, I think you mentioned it before the show, before we started, Brad Stevens going to the Celtics. Sure, they suck now, but they're the Boston Celtics. You just mentioned it. You kind of saved me there with the whole Michigan State's rebuilding. That's awesome. I personally didn't know that. You know me, I'm not a huge college guy. It's also this fact, too, that I have to back Desmond up on. Is Detroit with their roster, are they even solid? Because I respected what they did in the offseason. I was like, oh, Detroit's going to be awesome this year. No. I like Greg Monroe. I like Andre Drummond. And I think if they can focus on that and then bring Izzo in, but I don't know if this time right now to bring Tom Izzo in is smart. So I think they have to kind of get their roster adjusted is the word. Get their roster adjusted, then start maybe flirting with Tom Izzo.
Well, at least they have guys they can trade. I mean, this is a 27 and 48 ball club. This is a ball club who was supposed to be in the playoffs. They weren't even supposed to be the 8th seed or the 7th seed. They were supposed to be not the 1 or the 2 or maybe even the 3, but they were probably supposed to be the 4 or
they
the
look
5
great on paper,
or even the 6th. The one thing that bodes well for them is they do have pieces they can trade. I mean, Josh Smith is a guy that teams will want. Brandon Jennings, I mean, Desmond, you talked about him, and I agree with your assessment, but he's a guy that they could trade. Go another. I think Andre Drummond's going to be one of the best centers in the league in a couple of years. They have some pieces. So let's go right into the next one because, I like this next one, and this is kind of going to play off of this a little bit. We were just talking about Michigan State. We're just talking about college. Let's talk about some of these recruits. Now, I know, some of them have come out and say they're going to the NBA right now. Some haven't. It's a lot of speculation. The big one's Jabari Parker because I'm reading reports recently that kind of make it sound like he might come back to Duke, which I feel like either way, a guy like Jabari Parker, he's going to get money whether it's this year or next year or the year after. So let's talk a little bit about these guys. Some of the guys I had that I had been thinking about and you guys can chime in with anyone, but I'm thinking about the Andrew Wiggins, Joel Embiid, Jabari Parker, Julius Randle, Marcus Smart, Dante Exum, and there's numerous others, Aaron Gordon, Doug McDermott. We have guys like this. Let's talk about some of these guys, and because a lot of people are concerned with this NCAA tournament, this March Madness, this bracket, and the way some of these players have kind of went away. Jabari Parker went early. Wiggins went early. Marcus Smart went early. Julius Randle's still kicking. Julius Randle could win a national championship. We don't know. I mean,
don't forget the Harrison twins as well.
The Harrison. There's so many good players who could potentially be in this draft. I mean, and we just talked about a couple too. The Gary Harris, even Adrian Payne, those guys. Let's dive into this a little bit. And I'm going to go to you first, Desmond, because I know you're running short on time here. Why don't you give me a couple of guys you really like who will probably come out this year, and we won't hold it against you if they decide to stay, and their impact, or are you worried about their stock now?
One of the guys that his stock is kind of taking a hit, and it's mainly just because of injury. Joel Embiid, the center from Kansas, he showed that when he was healthy in the paint, he impacted both sides of the floor. And an argument can be made that if he's healthy and playing for Kansas right now, they might have gone on. And we don't know how deep it could have gone. I mean, we're looking at what Kentucky was able to do in the paint. People can say that Kansas could have done that. Andrew Wiggins did declare for the draft. His offensive game is very raw. Andrew Wiggins has a lot to work on in terms of getting it done offensively consistently in the NBA. That's the hardest part for rookies of his mold. But defensively, I'd make the argument he's already better than most NBA players on the perimeter. Just his length, his ability to disrupt passing lanes, his feet are very quick, and his athletic ability is sensational. So look out for Andrew Wiggins. If he can get the right mentoring and coaching and work on his offensive game, good for him. As far as Jabari Parker, in my opinion, he's the best prospect in this whole draft class. And with the rumors about him staying, I could possibly see him staying, and that's one reason. That's Jahlil Okafor, the #1 ranked recruit out of Chicago, Illinois, Whitney Young High School, 6'10", 265. He showed out in the McDonald's game. He got in a 97 scout grade, and he already committed to Duke.
Who gets the 97 scout grade?
Exactly. So with that said, that's what Duke was missing. They had Parker playing the 5, and he just couldn't. At best, he's a small forward / flex power forward. Right. You add Jahlil Okafor to this Duke front court, him and Jabari could do some damage, especially with Jabari, whose game is predicated on a perimeter and slashing to the hole. Having a big guy down low is going to allow him to do that. So Jabari may very well stay with Coach K, and with Jahlil Okafor coming through with his 97 scout grade, that could be a big deal.
Can you imagine, real quick before we go to the other guys, could you imagine having to have that chat with Coach K and tell him you're going? That's like telling Greg Popovich you want to trade. Like, I don't. It's hard to be intimidating.
But I think Coach K, if he can keep Jabari Parker, he may start a trend that we just talked about that Tom Izzo was doing, but with more high-profile players. If you can get Jabari Parker to stay, maybe leave his junior or senior year, you might start a trend where young players are going, you know what, I might stay if you bring in the 97 scout grade guys. Maybe this.
And I like Jabari Parker either way. If he stays,
right,
if he comes to the NBA, either way, I think he's going to be a phenomenal player. Michael, let's get your thoughts here. Let's see what you have to say about these prospects.
Well, as a Lakers fan, I've been waiting for the draft since the off season of last year, I think it was.
Me too. It was interesting.
Yeah, I'm really. I was reading up on this earlier because I've been too preoccupied with the football draft that's been going on a month from Tuesday. But I did get a chance to review some of these things. I really like the fact that a lot of people see Aaron Gordon going to L.A. But personally, I've really been impressed with Dante Exum kid. Playing in Australia, came over in the what is that Nike tournament they have with it's almost like a junior Goodwill Games type of thing. Ends up scoring like 16 points, beats the Americans. With the Australia beating the USA.
Austin.
Oi, yeah, that's huge. Thank you for Foster's, by the way, Australia. Appreciate that. And that's their bad beer. Foster's, Australian for beer, American for amazing. Anyways,
that was spot on, man.
I'm loving this Dante Exum kid. But personally, for me, the biggest steal is going to be down at the bottom of this draft, and it's going to come from a guy named KJ McDaniel. If you guys don't know who KJ McDaniel is, coming out of Little John Coliseum, Clemson, South Carolina, this man is a 6'6", monster. He carried this team, almost made it to the granted it was an NIT, but we almost beat Larry Brown's SMU team, something that Minnesota and Rick Pitino, not Rich Pitino, Rick Pitino did. I don't know if you guys saw that, but Pitino was sitting behind the bench kind of coaching his brother the whole way. But, help out your brother any way you can. I get that. But, yeah, KJ McDaniel, this kid could very well possibly be a late first. Maybe help out a team like, maybe a San Antonio. I'm not counting them, in already, a Oklahoma City, even a Miami Heat. Those bottom teams that are looking for other role players that are going to be, solid guys. KJ McDaniel is going to be one of those guys. Personally, I kind of feel like Doug McDermott might be the next, guy that came out of BYU a few years ago that we were talking about.
Jimmer.
Thank you.
JJ McDermott?
No, KJ McDaniel's good. McDermott, man, I got a feeling he's going to be a Jimmer Fredette. Depending on where he goes, a lot of people see him going to Cleveland at like 9. Playing with Kyrie Irving would be nice, but at the same time, is he just going to be that guy that's going to, pull up and shoot? But again, I agree. Jabari Parker is probably going to stay when you bring in a guy like, Okafor. Imagine a guy 6'10", 260. Oh my God! And especially if Jabari Parker is going to be a slasher, Jabari Parker is going to turn into Freddy Krueger and Duke, and Okafor is going to be Jason Voorhees. They're going to carve them up.
Well, let's get Brandon's thought here. Brandon, who do you like?
First off, you guys are awesome. And real quick, you mentioned that McDermott might go to Cleveland. Well, is Kyrie even going to be in there? That's going to be a topic for the future. He's even going to be there. But anyways, I'm going to sort of cop out here. Now, earlier I said that I'm not the biggest college basketball fan, and I'm not. But this year, I have been March Madness crazy. I was paying attention all year long. I actually saw the first NCAA game, which was Dayton taking down their older brother, Ohio State. I watched that game. I've seen Arizona. So I'm going to cop out here and say I don't really want many members of Arizona leaving. Nick Johnson, I think his name's T.J. McConnell, Aaron Gordon. I don't want those guys to leave because they're building something solid here, kind of like you guys are saying with Michigan State. They're building something solid. Jabari Parker, I'm going to do what Andy said, and basically I'll be happy with whether he goes or stays. But the last show that you guys did, I think that one of the topics was the NBA age limit and who should like stay or leave at certain ages. And I'm one of those people that doesn't like players leaving so early. So I think that I'm going to cop out and basically say I don't want my Arizona products leaving.
And I feel for you there. I think Aaron Gordon is as good as gone. What do I know? But for me, I feel like, the Andrew Wiggins, I still feel like, personally, Andrew Wiggins would be my guy if I was first on the clock. I just see too much. Desmond touched a little bit on his defensive prowess. It's insane. His ceiling is nuts. To me, I've always thought that Andrew Wiggins kind of reminds me of some combination of like a Paul George, Tracy McGrady, Kevin Durant, minus that jumper because he can't shoot. Those type of really long, big swing guys.
Yeah.
And he has that Paul George mock on the defensive end. Just these guys who are physical specimens. But I kind of want to talk about Julius Randle, the big dog. That's my boy. I love Julius Randle. I think his game is so NBA ready at this point. Big guys do traditionally take a little longer to develop. I think his offense will be a little slower, but he's going to be probably an immediate impact on the rebounds. Another guy I really like is Marcus Smart. He's a guy I saw projected in a couple of mocks to the Lakers, Michael. I think that would help them tremendously. Point guard who can score. He's big. He's physical. He can dish. He can do everything.
And you can work with the bigs they have now, like Jordan Hill.
And you can. And I think Smart's Smart's actually the guy I want to go to Orlando. But we'll see how that plays out. And another one was the guy we brought up when we were talking about the Tom Izzo because he's a Michigan State guy. And I really like Gary Harris, the 6'5" shooting guard from Michigan State. He's a sophomore. He's a 19-year-old sophomore, too. So he's essentially, you get the same value as if you draft a Wiggins or a Parker at 19 as a freshman. I really like Harris. I think that he can shoot the ball well. I feel like he can come. I think he's a guy who's ready to come into the league, albeit he's just a sophomore. But Dante Exum is another one, I think. Michael, were you talking about Dante Exum?
Yeah, I'm really impressed with this kid. Really impressed.
He's very impressive. He has the total package when it comes to a guy who I feel like can be NBA ready. 6'6". A lot of people think he can play the point guard or the shooting guard. 18 years old. He's a little shy of 200 pounds, which is always kind of one of those
And
things.
we're going to need somebody to distribute the rock to Kobe. Why not Dante X?
Well, I mean, sure. The only thing I don't like about him is that he's 6'6" and like a $185. I think he needs to add a little weight to that frame. Because if you look at a guy like, I think Marcus Smart is 6'4", 200 pounds. So he's got 15 pounds on him, and he's 2 inches shorter.
And
He looks bigger than
he
that,
is
too.
lightning fast on a break.
He's a tank. I love Marcus Smart. I might like Marcus Smart more than Randall or Wiggins. Maybe
yeah, but you guys already have one flopper in Florida. Do you need another?
I'm gonna mute you in a second.
That's a good one.
So let's go. We had this topic was kind of one of our main topics to start with, and we switched it out for the Tom Izzo thing. And we can end the show with this one. We'll talk about the other night. I think it was Tuesday night. The Warriors and the Mavericks were playing. Monte Ellis had a go-ahead shot with like 16 or 15 seconds left in overtime that was blocked by Jermaine O'Neal. Now, the NBA later on Wednesday came clean and said that the referees got it wrong. It should have been a goaltend. The scariest part about this is we're seeing a Dallas team who's sitting, I think right now they're in 7th place in the West. So, like, losing one game is kind of a big deal with as tight as the race can get out West. I mean, we've seen this before. So what if Dallas falls one game short or a half game short of that 8th seed? I mean, how pissed off is Mark Cuban going to be? What does this say for the NBA, for the sake of replay? For the one thing I'm
sorry, guys. I do have to leave you guys, but I want to thank you for today.
Absolutely, Desmond. Thank you for
good
joining
luck,
us.
Thank you, Desmond.
We'll see you next week.
Back, man. Good luck.
Appreciate it, man.
So let's talk about this, and we don't have to dwell on it very long. I mean, what does this say? I like the fact that the NBA came out and they said, "Hey, we got the referees got the call wrong." That's one thing I really do appreciate. I think the NFL is the sport that I really look at, who's a little less, forthcoming with wanting to say that they got plays wrong. Now they do it. I won't say they won't, but I feel like the NBA really has taken strides in the last couple of years to say, "Hey, the referees made the wrong call." And obviously that doesn't fix a loss, but it steps in the right direction. We'll go to you first, Michael.
Well, I mean, any coach or any player that says that they don't, dwell on something like this happening if they end up losing by, a half game or something is completely, totally bogus, because obviously everybody's going to be like, man, if we would have gotten that one call, we'd be in. But realistically, if you're going to base an entire season off of one blown call, I really don't know how I feel about that, because I mean, any coach can look back and go, okay, yeah, that was a defining moment, we lost right there, that killed us. But I mean, how many other close games did they lose by maybe like a last second three or a last second layup or something like that?
Absolutely.
That could have totally not had this mean anything.
Yeah, then this doesn't matter at all.
At that point, it wouldn't have been exactly. So in a sense, I guess I'm kind of playing devil's advocate here. Mm-hmm. I applaud the league for coming out and saying, hey, they got it wrong. It should have been this. If the referee maybe would come out and apologize and say, hey, I made a human error. It happens. I'm human. Things happen. Cuban probably going to be livid if they end up losing by a half game. I think now they were a game and a half out prior to the game. I think now they're 2.5 out maybe. Even though they did beat the Clippers, despite the fact that Blake Griffin had a triple-double. So, I mean, the team's talented. The team's probably going – I literally see them making the playoffs, despite the fact that it's a tight race. I know Brandon's Suns are like a half game out of the 8th spot. So, I mean, granted, it's not over. But to say that this one moment, this one human error completely shot Dallas's season if – and this is a decent size if they lose and fall out of the playoffs. It's kind of – I don't want to say irresponsible, but it kind of is, because you're putting the blame on somebody else other than yourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, Dallas as it sits right now, I mean, they're in decent shape. They're sitting 7th. So, They're like a half a game ahead of the Grizzlies. And the Grizzlies are tied with the Suns, but they have the tiebreaker. So that's kind of how that sits. Brandon, let's get your thoughts on this. Don't get emotional about Phoenix being like they're virtually in is the worst part.
Well, thank you for that. It's been, first off, real quick, the playoff race is going to be wild. It's going to be crazy. And I just remember a few days ago my Suns were in the 7th seed. So for any Suns haters out there, take that. But that's another topic for another day. I'm going to sort of go with Michael on this because I sort of agreed with what you said at the start, Michael, how you were like, you can't really point the blame on anyone. Like, why are you even in this situation in the first place? You can't really blame a loss on the referees. Now, don't get me wrong, you guys should see me watch a basketball game. I am the referee's #1 critic. I am always giving those guys crap. But at the end of the day, they are the best in the business, and I need to kind of humble down. So basically, don't put yourself in that situation to where it leads to that. Refs are going to make mistakes. It happens. It's one of the hardest jobs in the planet. So really don't put yourself in that situation, but it is what it is. They made the call, and you got to move on. I'm one of those people that flips out over one call being fouled. But you know what? It's a foul. Move on. Brandon, come on, move on.
Yeah, and, the #1 rule in sports, and especially basketball, as I've played basketball over the years, is you never let the officials decide the outcome of the game. Now, they have ways to, twist and mold and kind of turn and shape the way of the game, but you cannot let them decide the game. And, that seems like this is what's happened here. And I like what Michael said, too, about, don't get yourself in the situation in the first place. Like, it sucks if you get burnt while you're baking something, but if you hadn't have stuck your hand in there without an oven mitt, you put yourself in a situation to get hurt. I know that's a weird analogy, but
it makes sense.
I feel like the reason it's really going to sting if they did happen to miss the playoffs is because it happened so close to the end of the season. So when you get to the point where there's a few games left and it happens there is the big kicker. But I feel like we've kind of said all we had to say on this. Let's get one last shot out of the cannon before we go.
Nice.
And I want to ask you two right now, if the playoffs were to start today in the NBA, the matchups would look something like the East first. The Heat and the Knicks, the Pacers and the Bobcats, the Raptors and the Wizards, the Bulls and the Nets, then the West is the Spurs and the Grizzlies, the Thunder and the Mavericks, the Clippers and the Warriors, and the Rockets and the Trailblazers. I want you guys to each just pick one matchup, and it doesn't even need much explaining. Pick one matchup from the East and one matchup from the West, and tell me which one is your favorite one, the one you want to see the most. We'll go to you first, Michael.
Well, personally, I'm really excited about that Washington-Toronto deal, and it's not even because I write for DCSK. It's just the fact that growing up, two bottom feeders. These guys have traditionally been just god-awful when it comes to the NBA, are now in prime position to, have continued success. You look at John Wall and all he's done with somehow or another Marcin Gortat crashing parties and, nice little huddles in Boston. That was great. And in the West, it's got to be, the Clippers and the Warriors. Again, two bottom feeders traditionally have now, draked their way into the NBA playoffs, starting from the bottom, and now they're there. But, just an overly talented Clippers team, a deep bench, despite the fact that Doc Rivers sent his boy, Glenn Davis, to the locker room during mid-game for some odd reason. I still don't know that whole story. But that's just a great matchup. You've got guys, Steph Curry, going up against maybe a Chris Paul. Just a great matchup. Those 3 sixes are just pure genius.
Ridiculous. Brandon, your two matchups.
First off, Andy, great little curveball just now. I'm not going to jinx my Suns and say they're going to be in there, but I would have said the Spurs and Suns if that were the case. But honestly, as much as I love that Clippers and Warriors matchup, that is going to be awesome. I got to say the Rockets and Blazers for me. I've been watching the Blazers team very closely this year, and the Rockets, they've they've beaten all my expectations. So I think that could be a really nice 6 or 7 game series. And I actually have the standings up here as well. I'm going to sort of go with Michael again. The Raptors and Washington. I mean, those are two teams that I didn't pick to even be in the playoffs. Not that I necessarily had a list or anything. Just saying that I didn't see them being as good as they are. In Washington, John Wall's been balling, man.
John Ball's been walling.
John Ball has been walling.
And, you know, I agree with you guys on
Yes.
both those matchups. I really do like the 3-6 is great right now as it stands. I was saying last week on War Room Sports on our Court Vision show, shout out to War Room Sports,
Yeah.
I was, talking about how I really wanted to see Houston get that 4 seed,
Mhm.
or I wanted to see Golden State get that 5 seed. I want to see Houston and Golden State. Still could happen, sure, absolutely. I think those are two of the fastest-paced teams in the league. But I do like in the West. I really like both of those series you guys both mentioned. But if I'm going to pick one, I want to see the Houston Portland one.
Mhm.
Houston does. Dwight Howard owns the Trailblazers this year. I don't remember what his numbers are exactly, but through 4 games, he has like an astonishing stat line. And Houston is 3-1 against the Trailblazers. Consequently, we've kind of
Come
seen
on, Marcus.
we've seen them fizzle out a little bit. I mean, there was a point where they were like the best team in the West. Now they're the 5th.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But
You're right.
we know the West is unforgiving like that. And in the East, I do like the Toronto-Washington series a lot too, but I really want to see this Bulls-Net series if it happens. I think we're going to see slow-paced defensive matchup. No Derrick Rose again. Joakim Noah stepped it up. A lot of people are calling for him to get a little more MVP love. I'm not one of those people. Shout out to Frank Santos. And it's going to be hard for Frank, I think, because Frank really does respect Joakim Noah, and he likes what the Bulls are doing. But he's the Nets fan, so I really want to be a fly on the wall when he's watching that series if it does happen. Good old school basketball, I think, is what we'll see. But watch out for
It is
that.
happening because
It might-
the
yeah, and
playoffs
very-
are already set for the most part, with the
And-
exception of the 7th and the 8th seed.
Watch out for that Grizzlies San Antonio series. Grizzlies have been getting beat by the Spurs. I think they're 3-1 against the Grizzlies this year, something of that.
Still going to be
Yeah,
a very physical
they're
series.
They're 3-0
But that's-
against the Grizzlies.
That's the team that made the Western Conference Finals last year. Just
Yes.
saying.
Yes. But that's also the Grizzlies it's essentially the same Grizzlies team that beat San Antonio a few years ago.
Exactly.
So a lot of great matchups. The West always provides a good spar. On behalf of myself, Michael, Brandon, Desmond, who's no longer here, and everybody at the Sports Kings Network, I'd like to thank you all for tuning in. Make sure you leave us a comment, man. I mean, we'll get with you. We'll talk a little sports. We'll talk basketball, anything. Watch our other shows. We have football shows. We have general sports shows, hockey. We're even doing wrestling these days. So head on over to www.sports-kings.com, and until next time, take it easy.